Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Highways and Environment Cabinet Panel, Wednesday, 17th of March 2021. I'd like to make a brief announcement. Please review the COVID regulations. Due to the coronavirus pandemic, the Council will be holding this meeting electronically in accordance with the relevant regulations. Members of the public may also attend this meeting in an electronic capacity, and there is a link on the Council's website for them to do so. Members of the Council are asked to keep their microphones switched off until called to speak, and to switch their microphones off once they have finished speaking. Cameras may be left on throughout the meeting if members wish. Cameras should be switched on if and when speaking in the meeting. To indicate a wish to speak, members should use the raise hand function. Use of the meeting chat function is exclusively for voting. At the end of the debate on each item of business, there will be a vote. Members should vote using the meeting chat function by indicating for, against, or abstain. I will declare the result after each vote. Officers are present at the meeting and will follow the same protocols. Breaks for at least 15 minutes will be held every 2 hours, and other breaks will be incorporated as appropriate. I think in practical terms, we've got this cabinet panel now. We've got a joint cabinet panel at 12 o'clock-ish, and then we've got the employment panel, which must start at 2 o'clock. And I know some of the members here are members of all panels. So I would suggest that if we can rattle through business as much as possible without stifling debate, and I would plan to have a half-hour lunch break between the two panels. That's between the Highways and Environment and the joint panel, about 11:30, 12-ish. So that will cover our 15-minute break. We will obviously endeavour to, well, we would need to finish by at least 1:45 from the joint panel to make sure the employment panel can commence at 2 o'clock. First of all, I'd ask members please to introduce themselves, and I'll read out in order. Eric?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eric Buckmaster. I'm the Deputy Executive Member for Highways and the Environment and the Vice Chair. Thank you.
Stephen?
Yep. Stephen Giles Medhurst, Liberal Democrat Group Leader. I represent Central Watford and Oxley and the Highway spokesperson. Thank you, Chair.
Steve?
Steve Jarvis, Royston Western Rural.
Jeff?
Yeah, good morning, Jeff Jones, member for Buntingford.
Asif?
Good morning, I'm the member for North Watford.
Joan?
Good morning, Joan King, member for South Oxley and Eastbury.
Mark?
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Mark Mills Bishop, County Councillor for Famberstead and Turnford. Mr. Chairman, can I mention that I have a declarable interest to make for item 3?
Which is?
Yes, I'm a County Councillor and Borough Councillor for the Borough of Broxbourne, and also when the ministerial directive was issued to the borough in October 2019, I was the leader of the borough. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think that's what you expected to do, Mark, so I don't think there's any real interest there to declare. But thank you for bringing that up. Michael?
I'm County Councillor for Baldock and a little bit of Letchworth.
Robin?
Thank you, Chair. Robin Parker, Lib Dem County Councillor for Chells in Stevenage.
Richard?
Good morning, Richard Smith. I represent Welling Division of the County Council.
Jane?
Good morning, Jane West representing Bushy North.
And Colin?
Morning all, Colin Woodward, Bishop Stortford West.
Okay, thank you. Mark's already declared an interest. Anyone else to declare any pecuniary or declarable interests before we commence? Okay, I'll take that as a no. First item, would the panel like to confirm the minutes of the 5th of February 21 for accuracy?
Yeah, fine.
Just a quick show of hands to do on that one, if you could.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. Right, number 2, public petitions. There were none received. So number 3, we need to read the recommendations as set out in the air quality plan for Broxbourne, Broxbourne local number 2 plan outline business case. I believe Trevor is here to lead on the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bibby, and thank you for your time this morning, members. I will be as brief as I can. So this is the purpose of this report is to provide a further update in terms of the work both Broxbourne Borough Council and Hertfordshire County Council have been undertaking to address the ministerial direction which was served on Broxbourne due to exceedance of nitrogen dioxide over 40 micrograms per cubic metre air on a particular section of the A10. The recommendations of this report are that this Cabinet panel recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet agrees the recommendations as set out in the Annex A. That Cabinet panel recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet notes the possibility of grant funding for the implementation of these options, and also that panel recommendations to Cabinet that the Director of Environment and Infrastructure, in consultation with the Executive Member for Highways and Environment, agree to the receipt of a grant from JACO to fund the implementation and the measures. So I'm going to be as brief as I can, Councillor Bibby. So in essence, this report has come to both Highways and Environment and Main panel on a number of occasions. We've been undertaking this work with Broxbourne principally over the last 2 years, and we're in the final stages of that work. In essence, when we started with the programme, JACU, which is a joint unit between DEFRA and DFT, asked us to consider a whole host of opportunities to address air quality exceedance at the time. In the original programme, we had over 75 different interventions. Of those interventions, the only one at the time was to introduce a congestion zone. The introduction of a congestion zone would bring around a over 10% reduction in traffic, which is principally what's needed to address climate change. Subsequently, we've gone through a number of iterations. We are now at the point where JACO have basically said they no longer want us to consider a congestion zone, and they've asked us to look again at the softer measures we originally identified. Where we are in that process is JACO have agreed of that original list of 70, principally 4 areas they want us to implement. Those 4 areas principally cover public transport infrastructure improvements. So what we're suggesting to JACU is we will upgrade 20 stops and shelters across Broxbourne. This will include DDA compliant curbing improvements, new shelters, real-time passenger information, etc. Also, in support of that, we are going to look to develop a mobile ticketing app for users of bus services within Broxbourne. We're also looking for funding to develop smart ticketing and further awareness campaigns and ongoing marketing of existing routes. Thirdly, we're looking to create a dedicated travel area on the existing Interlink partnership website, where key information concerning bus provision in Broxbourne will be detailed. And finally, we're looking to install variable messaging signs along the A10, which will be linked to air quality monitoring units. So when air quality is poor, automatically information about actively encouraging people to reduce anti-idling, use public transport, to walk or cycle more. Where we are in the process is that final business case to central government is due to be submitted in June of this year. In terms of the ask for the implementation, we've set out proposals for just over £1 million to be considered grant funding from JACU. In terms of the success of that, what we've been told by JACU is the Minister is currently reviewing our proposals, and we should receive a formal response from JACU in the coming weeks. Anything more do you want me to go in, Phil, or have I summarised? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'd just like to add for context. I mean, some people will know that there is a bid in locally for infrastructure improvements to actually improve east-west connectivity. And also we've got the M25 upgrade by Highways England. These are in the future, probably the upgrade of the roundabout is going to happen before the east-west connectivity, because we haven't actually got the money to do that yet and no plans afoot. But those are in hand, so hopefully they will improve the throughput of traffic, which will improve the air quality. But I just give it for context because there are improvements hoped for in the future. In the meantime, all we can really do is introduce these soft measures in preference to a charging zone. Before I bring in Colin as the first up, would Mark want to add anything as the only local member here?
Thank you, Chair. No, I welcome the report, Trevor. I think it's a good report. I've worked on it and been aware of it for some time, and it's a bit of a full circle, I think, in regard to the proposals. The only question I had was, did you mention about funding? Funding is being made through JACU, is that correct?
Yes.
Secondly, yeah. Can I just add a second question? And the second question is in relation to the Junction 25 M25, where there is substantial works going on very close to the site on the A10 where these monitors are going in. Is there any significant impact, do you think?
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. So in the first instance, as I set out in the report, we've asked JACU for funding to implement these 4 measures. The approximate cost of that is just over £1 million. What JACU have indicated is if they agree those options, therefore we will receive a grant to that total. So in terms of resourcing on both Broxbourne and ourselves, that would be fully met from JACU. In terms of the overall scheme, you're absolutely right. One of the reasons why we couldn't potentially implement some of the more robust measures like congestion zone is basically JACU said we couldn't implement that until after the M25 Junction 25 works. In terms of the sort of immediate impact, HE have done the modelling around that, and they don't necessarily see a substantive increase in terms of air quality with the construction traffic, etc. Their hope is that with the improvements to that junction, there would be more of a free flow of traffic along the M25, and it actually might address some of the very localised air quality issues in the area.
Thank you. Colin.
I think I'm unmuted now. Yes, thank you, Chair. I too welcome the report and compliment the officers and the local members that have been involved in what has been a very complex situation for critical air quality problem, and recognise that it's very difficult to find an optimal solution here, and they try to sort of carve the best path possible. I'm hoping that from all this work that there can be learnings that can be carried across to the other air quality management areas that we have in Hertfordshire, because I think a number of members would recognise that it's not just this borough that's affected, and certainly there have been pre to the pandemic quietening of traffic, some critical areas around the county. Particularly in relation to this report, though, I would flag up the item on table 1, item 6, which relates to 5.2 anti-idling. And I think that there's an opportunity to be a bit more proactive on this, because it's all very well exhorting people to the best behaviour with variable messaging signs, but sometimes you need to have a little bit of teeth behind these things as well. And legislation does exist to issue penalty charge notices for people that don't comply with anti-idling. And I'd like to explore with officers whether it's possible to see whether this is an option to be considered, perhaps a back pocket option. But if there's no visible improvement with just signage, perhaps we ought to seriously consider and be ready to implement some penalty charge notices, which can be done by district and borough councils, I believe, through their civil enforcement officers. I think also what this report has done has highlighted something that relates to the COVID measures that have been taken in various towns across Hertfordshire, and that is the knock-on effect on other areas. So I think what we need to be mindful of going forward is that whilst improving air quality in certain specific zones, we have increased traffic volumes in residential streets that weren't used to it, and consequently the air quality. So I'd like to call upon district councils via our panel to actually start considering whether they should be monitoring some of these other areas, and indeed whether their air quality management areas are widely drawn enough, given pre-COVID traffic levels were some way beyond the original boundaries that were driven for AQMAs. Thank you, Chair.
Two questions there, Trevor, I think, about the anti-idling and the local monitoring.
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Woodward. I think that's an excellent suggestion. I'll take it, and we will consider it internally about how we might do that. And you're absolutely right. Behaviour change will get you some way, but there is this carrot and sticks, and maybe consideration of fixed penalty notice to actively discourage those individuals who constantly will rev engines outside schools and things like that. So yeah, happily to consider that. And you're correct about the wider monitoring opportunities. I think, as you said, what this piece of work did say is when you deal with a issue at one point, it then does have an effect elsewhere on the network, and we've got the sort of modelling data to prove that. What is interestingly enough is the congestion zone in terms of the effect elsewhere. It was a small increase in air quality disadvantage elsewhere, and I suppose that's a policy consideration we need to take. So yeah, I think that we're happy to take those suggestions forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
What I'm intending to say now is not a criticism of the officers, because I had a briefing on this earlier in the week. And I know they have worked hard on this, but I have to say it's a frustration that all the proposals that would actually do something to reduce or improve air quality on this have all been kicked into touch by JACU. And I have to say, spending £900,000 on improving bus stops will probably make zero difference to air quality. Because it's all very well improving bus stops with Kestrel curbs and everything else, but if you can't get people out of the cars into buses, and at the same time JACU has vetoed having buses that don't, it's in the report here, saying they actually said no to having buses that achieve high qualities of air quality, i.e. changing the bus fleet, upgrading it because of the high costs. Well, if you don't have hydrogen buses or electric buses, and you're still going to run for the next 9 years diesel and electric buses, that will do nothing. So spending 1.1 million, I think it is, we're getting from JACU, or should be getting from JACU, probably actually at the end of the day will achieve zero in this, which is very, very disappointing, given the work that clearly Broxbourne Council's put into this, the local members have put into this, and clearly county officers have. And it's incredibly naive of a government body like this to think that upgrading bus stops, when all of the other measures here suggested, and when we last had this discussion, we were looking at VSM signs at traffic lights, discouraging people, as Colin said, having their engines running. That's been kicked into touch as well. Quite frankly, if you spent £900,000 on the current bus service by saying, actually, this is the cost of using the bus is reduced by 50%, and we'll use the £900,000, that would have a more dramatic effect of getting people out of their cars onto the buses than spending £900,000 on some physical infrastructure. It's very, very disappointing, and it shows me that certainly the government department and those at JACU have not grasped the necessarily hard targets we need to meet in terms of climate change and air quality monitoring on this. So, yeah, take the money and do the work, and it's better than doing nothing. But will it have any effect? I doubt it very, very much.
I don't think anyone would disagree with you, Stephen. I mean, we all know that we were frustrated that JACU took so long to actually agree with us that if we put in a charging zone, it will just transfer the problem elsewhere through Harlow or Stevenage or whatever. So at least they actually got the message there. I mean, I suppose in reality, you can spend as much money as you want on improving this area, but it will take so long to do it. We're not going to actually achieve the goals in the short term, but hopefully what's happening now will help. And with improvements down the line, the air quality will improve exponentially. I mean, I suppose on the positive side of me, I think, well, with the changing travel arrangements through post-COVID, perhaps the air quality will reduce anyway in its own form, but as whatever we can do to help it will be good.
Yeah, just to add to that, yeah. Councillor Bibby, in terms of natural compliance, we will the Broxbourne will achieve the reduction by 2025 anyway, which is the year of natural compliance due to changes in fleet levels and vehicular traffic. The point of this whole project was trying to bring that compliance forward. So as I said, we're not going to claim it's going to single-handedly improve air quality. What it will do is it will just provide an uplift in short-term public transport provision. And as I said, in terms of natural compliance, they will achieve it by 2025 anyway. So, yeah.
Thank you. Eric.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, a lot's been said already, so I'm not going to repeat that. There's always the challenge, isn't there? The carrot versus the stick. And I note that, a number of the soft options are actually trying to change behaviour and encourage transport uses, public transport uses. I was just wondering about soft option 1, where it talks about new and enhanced bus services. I was wondering whether, maybe it's too early to say, but is there any sense around whether that is changes or extending routes as opposed to more physical buses?
Yeah, no, thank you, Councillor Buckler. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we're going to try and be as savvy as we can with the money. So where we were potentially looking to invest in infrastructure improvements on bus stops in Broxbourne, this opportunity allows us to sort of forward fund those, and potentially the funding which was allocated to improve those bus stops, that could hopefully be considered to adding additional capacity to existing services. I mean, as other councillors said, the original proposals were to introduce brand new services, new buses, but as I said in the report, JACU felt the cost benefit of that they weren't willing to bear that. And we did challenge them over zero emission bus stops in terms of hydrogen fueling or EV for bus provisions, and they basically didn't feel that they could justify that level of funding because it was for 10 million as compared to the 1 million. So I think in terms of what other councillors have said in terms of officers, we are disappointed with what we've got, but we want to be as positive as we can in terms of that investment.
Simon, did you want to come back on that issue?
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. It was just a quick one to say the bus strategy, national bus strategy, was launched earlier this week, and it's very early days. But alongside that, forgive me, I was going to look at an email. The Department for Transport also set up a zero emission bus regional areas, ZEBRA, fantastic acronym, to help deliver over 4,000 zero emission buses across the network. They're making £70 million available for that for bidding in 21-22. We, Hertfordshire, will bid into that for electric buses. It's not quite as simple as they give us all the money. We've got to find some money ourselves, but we will be putting a bid in if we are successful. And members will recall we did try to go for electric bus town last year. But if we are successful getting money for zero emission buses into Hertfordshire, Broxbourne would be one of the clear areas we would look to put them into. So yeah, JACU may have said no, but DFT appear to be putting some money into, well, they say 4,000 zero-emission buses across the England network.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Steve.
Thanks. Well, I mean, I think I share others' scepticism that these proposed changes that JACU are prepared to fund are actually going to transform the situation. And clearly the news about electric buses independently of that is good, but 4,000 is quite a small proportion of the number of buses in the country. Although I suppose if they're all in Broxbourne, that would have an impact. What are we going to do to measure the effect of these measures? Because it seems to me that's something that's important to do. The fact that some interventions are going to be funded provides us with an opportunity to look at how effective they are and perhaps decide how the council might invest its own money in other places where JACU isn't funding this sort of thing. So we might get some positive benefit out of it like that, even if we don't improve the air quality in Broxbourne a great deal.
Trevor, I assume that Broxbourne will be tasked with actually monitoring the air quality very closely to help us with that?
Yeah, so Broxbourne already have a network of diffusion tubes along the A10 corridor and within the wider Broxbourne, because, as I said, that they're still having to deal with the issues around air quality. But yeah, you know, it's consideration we are taking forward. I think one of the issues we have is, as members have said, some of these suggestions and interventions is we're struggling to see the direct link in terms of improving air quality, and we're not getting away from that fact, and we're not claiming that. But we are, as part of the funding proposals, is we have to monitor the effectiveness of our interventions. So there is a monitoring framework which is being developed as well, which will take forward some of the things. One of the issues we will have is actually trying to sort of get that granular data. So if we get 100 new people on buses, it is difficult to sort of assess the effectiveness in terms of air quality. So yeah, it's being considered, and as I said, we're being led by JACU in terms of what that monitoring framework looks like. But certainly, what we're keen to do is any positive learning from this project is we will be working with the districts across Hertfordshire to sort of see, are there any positive we should be looking elsewhere on the network.
Okay. Jeff, looks like you have the last word.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, really, just agreeing, you know, with the scepticism on these soft proposals. Yeah, I guess it's better than nothing, but I don't really believe it's going to gain too much. It's certainly a lot better than the charging zone proposal that we had originally. Yeah, that was obviously never going to work. It's going to cause chaos in terms of diverting people avoiding the charging zone. That would become the challenge. But I do wonder, sort of long term, what the solution is here. Yeah, I agree, electric buses, hydrogen buses. But to me, the big problem we've got the air quality in that area is the A10 and with idling traffic, which is caused by hold-ups at the sort of pinch points, the roundabout, the two sets of lights, etc. Surely the answer to improve the air quality there will keep the traffic moving. So on the A10 there, I think that would make a huge difference. So surely, obviously, that's a very expensive option, but there should be some sort of long-term aspiration to perhaps put in, I don't know whether they would be flyovers, underpasses at those junctions, the two sets of traffic lights and the big roundabout, to allow traffic, especially with the improvements at junction 25 on the M25, to just get free-flowing traffic down the A10 onto the M25 or wherever they need to go. Yeah, it's just that, yeah. So really, I'm just thinking longer term, what should we be doing?
Can't disagree, Jeff. I mean, because when they first came out with the charging zone proposals, my first reaction was, can't we sort of get some serious money out of them to actually improve the junctions, to improve the traffic flow? The thing is, it was too expensive. Yeah, it was too expensive.
It was the time period was too. We couldn't do it. Didn't we have 6 months or something to do it? So.
No, yeah, that's right. It would take too long for the infrastructure improvements and too costly, and they wanted results sort of yesterday. But hopefully, the improved junctions to improve the east-west connectivity, if that comes off, and with the improved traffic throughput of the junction 25, hopefully that will long-term do what we all want to do, really, keep traffic flowing more freely. Yeah. But short-term, it wasn't an option, I'm afraid.
No.
Yeah, just to support Councillor Bibby, like you can address air quality in two ways. You can basically reduce overall volumes using the network by about 10%. That will give you the adherence to the direction. Or as member said, is you provide more throughput along the A10, and therefore you're reducing anti-idling. As Councillor Bibby said, we've got a separate bid in terms of major road networks, which there is an element of that increasing opportunities of flows. The difficulty you have there is we're trying to then balance that with providing crossing points from one side of Broxbourne to the other. So it's that balancing approach between just allowing traffic to go through. And the way you do that is at the moment you hold traffic to the side and you just let traffic go through. In terms of flyovers and underpasses, that as that has been looked at, but that's a whole level of different funding required to actually deliver those improvements. But you're absolutely right. If you had an underpass or an overpass and you just let traffic come through, you wouldn't necessarily have the air quality impact. Yeah. But as I said, it's a fine balancing act, and it's also incredibly expensive as well. So yeah.
Steve, is that a legacy hand?
Yes. Sorry.
Right, Mark, you wanted to come back.
Only very quickly, Chairman, thank you. And to answer Jeff's point, the borough local plan does include some alterations and work to be done around the pinch points, particularly at Church Lane is one, the Brookfield Centre and the Turnford Interchange is another. So there are measures that would allow the free flow of traffic to go through, in part, through the borough local plan. I think Trevor might want to kind of comment on that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Councillor. So as part of this, as part of the MRM bid, the separate bid, we've basically taken the aspirations of what's in the local plan and the Broxbourne transport strategy, and the proposals around changes to both Church and College and Lieutenant Ellis Way. They are part of this bid going forward, and if it is successful, it will then change the roundabouts and the junctions themselves. But as I said, it's about creating that balancing act to provide free flow of traffic, but also not reducing the opportunities for people to cross from one side of the A10 to the other, basically. So yeah, they are being considered as part of this MRM bid.
Okay, thank you. We've got some lengthily or comparatively lengthy recommendations, which I'll read out briefly. That the Cabinet panel recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet agrees the recommendations as set out in Annex A to this report, the air quality plan for Broxbourne, the Broxbourne local plan, outline business case, section 9, table B1, funding and scheme comments for pursued measures. You are so cruel to me, officers. That the Cabinet panel recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet notes the possibility of grant funding from JACU, the implementation of softer transport options. And the third one, that the Cabinet panel recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet agrees the proposed delegation of responsibility to the Director of Environment and Infrastructure in consultation with the Executive Member for Highways and Environment to agree the receipt of a grant from JACU to fund the implementation of softer transport options. If I can ask you to indicate for, against or abstain in the chat, please.
Chair, I want a clarification on the recommendations, if I may, please.
Okay.
Yeah, because it says here notes the possibility of grant funding and agrees to the receipt of a grant. So I take it these proposals, which I think we've all accepted, aren't necessarily going to solve the problem. That's quite clear. But we're only going to do what the 1.1 million that's been suggested, 900,000 buses, if we get the money. We're not doing it otherwise. Is that correct? Because It's a very odd phrase. We note the possibility of grant funding.
Yes, so
Yeah.
Councillor is absolutely right. Because we haven't received formal notification from JACU that we're going to receive the funding, it's very likely we will receive the funding. We were reluctant to say we're definitely going to get it because we haven't received it yet. So I think that's where the possibility. But rest assured, the conversation with JACU is if they agree the funding, we should be receiving that in the coming weeks, if you see what I mean. So there's a slight nuance to the recommendation. In essence, what we're asking for is, do you agree with the options? If there will be funding for those options, and the executive member and the department lead will then necessarily just agree on your behalf, basically. So sorry about the slight confusion. It was just we weren't allowed to put it's definitely going to get it. We had to put the possibility in there, but it's very likely.
And I would assume if we don't, then we don't do anything.
Exactly. If the funding isn't forthcoming, with the level of that investment is not going to be the £1 million work. And JACU are fully aware of that. And as I said, we're not beholden if we don't receive the money. So
okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Phil. Thanks, Trevor.
Okay, that's been agreed. Thank you. We go on to next item, which is Sustainable Hertfordshire Progress Report, and either Julie or Hugh is going to present this report. Hugh, hello.
Hugh. It's going to be me today. Hello, Councillor Bibby. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's keeping safe and well. As following Trevor's lead, I hope we're going to keep this brief, as brief as possible. The purpose of this report is just to present to members what's been delivered by the Sustainable Hertfordshire team in relation to delivering the Sustainable Hertfordshire central ambitions outlined in the strategy and also the action plan. So we've been hard at work since the inception of the team in August to be able to deliver the priorities outlined within the Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy. We have now been looking to deliver the Sustainable Hertfordshire Action Plan, which was confirmed at Cabinet in December 2020. So just to be able to touch upon some of the brief highlights from the report. So first and foremost, we're now in the process of delivering a Sustainable Hertfordshire funding pot. It's been confirmed as part of the IP process that Sustainable Hertfordshire will be responsible for the delivery of £10 million worth of capital investment over a 5-year period, with the exception of 1.5 million, which has already been allocated to the delivery of the school's energy initiative. We will be looking to be able to identify opportunities for investment to be able to deliver against the Sustainable Hertfordshire ambition and improve energy standards across the county. Equally, we've also been allocated a £2 million revenue budget, where we will be looking to be able to ensure that that's spent effectively for delivery against the similar kind of things against the ambitions. This will be met by and delivered by the Sustainable Hertfordshire Board, which is chaired by Mark Kemp, and bids made against this funding will obviously include members as part of the delivery process. With regards to additional work that's being carried out by the Sustainable Hertfordshire team, we've been hard at work contributing as part of a wider organisational approach to delivering applications to the public sector decarbonisation scheme. We've been providing substantial programme management support for the delivery of this. I can confirm now that we've been allocated £24 million from central government to be able to support in the delivery of heat decarbonisation works across the county. That will be to delivering in the states such as schools, that are non-schools and schools estates. And I've just had confirmation this morning from central government that Hertfordshire County Council has been allocated the third highest amount of funding from the scheme, which underlines our commitment to be able to deliver against the Sustainable Hertfordshire ambition. With regards to a county-specific level, Sustainable Hertfordshire team continues to show leadership and engagement with our district and borough councils via the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. We're looking to be able to encourage a collaborative local authority action and deliver shared actions to be able to make sure we meet our shared sustainability goals that are delivered across the county. Furthermore, we've also embedded a comprehensive communication campaign to be able to not only connect with public and private sector, but also engage directly with residents to be able to start that process of embedding change, which we recognise is going to be take over a long period of processing. Finally, with regards to the action plan that we're wanting to be able to deliver, we're currently working in partnership with the Local Partnership, which is an organisation affiliated to the LGA. We're looking to be able to review the action plan that's been confirmed at Cabinet and be able to do a comprehensive carbon trajectory to be able to deliver against our central ambition, which is being a carbon neutral organisation by 2030. And then just to be able to touch upon two large projects that we're working on in terms of the transformation piece. We're currently working in partnership with Public Health to be able to address health inequalities through engagement with green space. And then we're also currently in the process of delivering against the fleet transformation programme. We've in the process of working with EST to be able to review Hertfordshire's entire fleet, and we'll be able to have hopefully provide a report to members soon with regards to identifying how carbon emissions can be delivered against our fleet moving forward. I will stop there and welcome any questions.
Yeah, just got that email this morning, like you, Hugh. It's good news that we've got such good funding for sort of upgrading, as it were, school buildings, etc. Because that's probably where we will get the most bang for our buck.
Absolutely.
Have the most impact on climate change improvements, etc. Do you want to add anything, Julie, or just field questions?
That's fine. Happy to field questions as they come in. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. I don't see any hands yet. Steve.
Thank you. I'm not clear. Is this a report is it coming here because the Highways and Environment is going to receive some reports on sustainable Hertfordshire for the whole council, or is it coming here because it's going to every other panel?
The reason that it's being presented to this particular panel is, well, for a number of reasons. The first one being that it's in March, and at the December meetings we said we would report back. First report would be in March, and this was the most appropriate panel that fitted that time agenda, and we couldn't come to the joint panel because it was a specific joint panel for a specific purpose. But the report has been shared with all of the county councillors for exactly that very reason that you say, Councillor Jarvis. We took the strategy and the action plan through each of the cabinet panels, and so the update report has been sent to all county councillors so that they get the update as well, and they're free to comment back to officers if they want to via email.
Okay, so future updates you would expect to go to all the panels rather than just the stuff.
Well, that I'm sure that will be subject to what happens after May.
Yeah.
There may well be a decision made around the portfolios and how we do report Sustainable Hertfordshire. I'm sure that will be determined after May.
Okay, since I did notice that there's little in here about the specific actions that were identified for Highways and Environment. I mean, There were some that were identified as quick wins in terms of work scheduling and that kind of thing, and it doesn't say anything about that. But I guess that explains why that is. I noticed that we still have a set of objectives described as business as usual, and I thought that. I thought we'd accepted that business as usual wasn't going to bring about the sustainability transformation, and it gave the wrong impression to call something business as usual. And it may be related to things that the councillors continue to do, but actually they've got to change the way they do it. So I was a bit disappointed that we still had that phraseology. And I think. Sorry,
do you want me to come back on that specific point? When we went through the panel process in December, you're right, you did make that suggestion, and we took on board that suggestion, and we changed the wording of the published action plan to talk about business as usual unless it's subject to the need to adapt. So we have changed the terminology within the action plan itself, but sorry, it wasn't reflected in the panel paper that we've presented today, but that was taken on board.
Okay. I think that's important that the entire organisation realises that if we don't achieve these sustainability goals, probably everything has to change, some more than that, but it impacts everything. And I guess my other question related to the I mean, clearly there's some extra funding from the public sector decarbonisation fund. I may have got the words in the wrong order for that, but that's essentially what it's called, isn't it? But from what I could see, that's going to enable us to get to a point where around about a quarter of the schools have had PV panels and batteries and improve insulation. So we've still got to identify means for funding the other 3/4, I guess, on that basis. Is that correct?
So UK, if I go back to that one, Julie. So thank you to Councillor Jarvis. So that's correct. Those are the schools that have been identified as those were the schools that were recommended to us by our estates team in terms of being able to get immediate results for our works programme. Having had conversations with central government, we understand that this might not be the only funding opportunity for the delivery of works of this nature. It's the case that obviously, as this is quite a topical area for central government, we expect potential funding revenue to be made moving forward. And obviously, with the delivery of heat decarbonisation schemes across our non-schools and schools estate portfolio, once that's delivered, we'll identify other options for other areas which require further investment moving forward.
So I guess a follow-on from that, it's fairly clear that the proportion of the schools estate that is dealt with. What I don't have a feel for is what proportion of the non-schools estate we've dealt with and what proportion remains to be addressed. Because I don't know how big the non-schools estate is, I suppose.
Yes, and there's a piece of work that our colleagues in Resources and Performance are undertaking at the moment, which is a strategic asset management review. And I think I've got that right in the right order. And I've had conversations with the consultants who've been employed to do that piece of work. And that's the first step that we need to take in identifying what is happening with the non-schools estate, to be able to identify what we've got in our portfolio, to then look at the level of intervention that might be needed in some of those properties. So that piece of work sits with Property Resources and Performance and in terms of property, and that's a piece of work that's just been started by Carter Jonas.
Okay, thanks so much.
Got Colin next. Colin?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I was quite impressed just a couple of years ago when, through the work of Terry Hone, portfolio holder for community safety and waste management, the environment team really stepped up and we made significant inroads into sustainability and improvements through the Leading by Example initiative, but which will continue when we are back to meeting face to face, which hopefully will not be too far distant. But I have to take this opportunity, I think, to compliment the energy, enthusiasm and really hard work that has gone into this work of Sustainable Hertfordshire by all of the officers that are actually involved. And I'm particularly appreciative of the collaboration initiatives that they are now taking forward with the districts, because I think there is a great opportunity there. So I hope all the panel share my appreciation for the work that's done and the fact that it's very impressive with the complexity and breadth of what is actually being put forward. So well done, everybody.
Thank you.
I'm sure we do, Colin. Stephen?
Yeah, a couple of points. Briefing, and it's been touched on here about the Sustainable Hearts board. And Hugh mentioned member engagement, but it wasn't clear how that's going to be undertaken in terms of what projects are taken forward, whether that comes back to this panel or a bespoke panel or what. So I would like clarification on that, and that to be at least covered within the minutes of this meeting. There will be member involvement on what projects are taken forward. One specific point in particular on the report was, the Martin's report, is on biodiversity 4.41, where there's mention about district council green spaces opportunities audit. This was news to me, and indeed was news to my district council. They weren't aware of this. So is this something that's going to be proposed rather than already underway? And of course, in terms of green spaces, it's not just district councils and borough councils that have the green spaces. Those that have obviously divested themselves of their housing responsibility, housing associations in particular, have a huge wodge of green spaces around their housing portfolio. Which obviously are managed separately from the district and borough councils. Similarly, within this, and we've had discussion previously, Chair, as you will recall, about rewilding and the fact there was the pilot in North Herts, and you will recall, I believe, that we were a little bit critical. Number of pilot schemes or areas have been reduced from what was originally proposed. That doesn't appear to feature in this report unless I've missed it, and I apologise if I have missed it. So could I have some further information in relation to that? And similarly, and indeed we just touched on it in terms of Broxbourne, what we are doing about low traffic zones and no idling zones. There is increasing pressure now that schools, where at all possible, all should have no idling zones. And there seems to be a bit of a brickbat between, well, that's district council responsibility. Hang on, you're the highways authority. You will approve it, but the district council has to implement it. Again, it's a question of this joined upness. Who is totally responsible for the no idling zones? I think this is where we fall between a chicken and egg sometimes. And a grateful for clarification on that point as well, please.
Okay.
The last thing I'll just throw in that Simon Brown and his colleagues are working very closely with the schools from the Herts County Council end to encourage no idling zones and allowing them to put up suitable signs, etc. But Julie or Hugh, who wants to take?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take the.
I appreciate that, Phil, but
yeah.
I've been told if that's implemented, it's the responsibility of the Parking Enforcement Authority, i.e. the district or borough council, to enforce. But if they've not been given the regulations to enforce, they then can't enforce it. Just putting up signs doesn't solve the problem.
At the moment, Stephen, we're not going hard on this. It's not going to be a TRO, etc., and enforceable. It's really a voluntary initiative to see how it works, really.
No, fair point. You've clarified a bit, but I appreciate what Julie said. Sorry to interrupt you, Julie.
Yeah,
that's right. Thank you. Okay, so taking excuse me, each point in turn, with regard to the spend and the 10 million capital and the 2 million revenue, we've had a couple of meetings with our colleagues in finance over the last couple of weeks around defining a process and a protocol and the governance arrangements. And the governance arrangements will involve members because we, depending on the level of spend, will need to go through panel and cabinet process dependent on the level of spend. That's going to be confirmed over the next couple of weeks. We've got another meeting with finance next week to clarify what's going on in terms of the criteria for assessment, which will be against the Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy ambitions and the actions, and then the governance arrangements. And clearly we need to hear what happens after May in terms of which panel this process may well go through. So I can't confirm which panel it will go to because we need to confirm that after May, but it will go through a panel because that's been confirmed to us via finances because that's the regulatory requirements. So there will be member involvement dependent on the level of spend. With regard to the district councils and the green space audit, that has been through all 11 authorities in terms of the Green Space Officers Group, and it was also confirmed via the most recent Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership meeting, again with all 10 district and borough councils and the county council confirming that this piece of work was going to go ahead, and the recruitment process is starting as of today to firm up the adverts that are needed for all three of those posts that are going to cover that particular agenda. I completely take your point about housing associations and other areas of green space, and that's something we'll take back and have a look at wider than just the district and borough council green spaces. So I thank you for that pointer. There is something in the action plan about rewilding, but we haven't progressed it sufficiently enough to report within this item. And the pilot projects you talked about, I understand, are specifically to do with highways verges, and I don't have an update on that for you, so I can't comment on that particular point. With regard to anti-idling and generally around air quality, what I will say is that we've got a partnership arrangement with Public Health with the wish to appoint a jointly funded post specifically to look at air quality. We've just gone through the Hay panel process yesterday to get approval to go out to recruit to a jointly funded post, and that is a real step forward because it will give us a dedicated resource that straddles public health and environment and infrastructure to look at air quality, to be able to actually implement the actions that we've got within the air quality strategy and the Sustainable Hertfordshire Strategy. And I'm sure that anti-idling will come under that particular banner. And as Phil says, there's lots of work going on at the moment with regard to schools through our Safer and Active Travel team around anti-idling. So I think that covers all of your questions, Councillor Giles Medhurst. If there's anything I've missed, please do let me know.
Okay, thank you. Michael?
Thank you. My question is to Julie. Julie, I sit as Vice Chair of Development Control Committee, and whenever we have an application from our Education Department for complete new build of a school or extensions to increase the number of pupils going to that school, I always ask, why aren't we having solar panels on the roof? The answer is we haven't got enough money for it. Now, will some of this money, you've mentioned it can be used to update existing schools, can it be used for new build so that we can have solar panels and any other environmental savings on new build, which is most important?
In terms of the SALEX money that comes via public sector decarbonisation, that's specifically to do with the existing public estate. However, we have had conversations with SALEX, and there is already a mechanism by which you can apply to cover the cost of the difference between traditional build and net zero, for example. So that is something that we're hoping to explore with SALEX as we move forward, with particular regard to new build and expansions. And we're in regular consultation and conversations with our colleagues in resources and performance with regard to the property portfolio, and that very much includes schools. So I think it's definitely a case-by-case basis, and if there were to be a new build application that came forward through our own colleagues, then there are benchmarks that they are seeking to achieve in terms of the Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy now. So we would hope that that's starting to come through in what you're seeing at Development Control Committee. But yes, there is the mechanism via SALEX to have that, to bridge that gap. Also, what we've put in the action plan is that we want to see a much more detailed request with regard to Section 106 monies to make sure that they cover enough to be able to deliver what we're asking for in terms of net zero, for example. So hopefully we have covered off all of those different elements with regard to new build.
Yeah, any additional funding would be great, but you might remember, Michael, because it probably went through your panel, we actually agreed, I think it's about £700,000 to actually upgrade a new build school as a pilot to see what we could do on the green agenda. I mean, obviously, I'm assuming that will work, and if it does, that would encourage everyone to actually put more money into building things properly in the first place. And you can talk about houses in that respect as well. So, yeah. Okay, thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just a small point. Can we go to point 4.55 about the resident survey? It says that the resident survey at the 16th was due to close on the 16th of February, and we had 485 respondents, which I just think is just so low for the amount of people in Hertfordshire. Mm-hmm. But you extended it to the 28th, and there's no number of people at the final figure. Well, I've also noticed in the report that when you had individual campaigns, you seem to have a much bigger response. Are we using the same media venues to get out this message on our surveys?
I'm just looking for the total number that we had when we closed, because we have got the total number.
So whilst Julie's looking for that number, Jane, just in regards to your point around the campaign mechanisms that we're utilising, we work in close collaboration with corporate comms to be able to deliver on those campaign infrastructures. I think with regards to the residential survey, because it's not a single topic issue, it means that there's not as much residential engagement as it can be for single topic issues, whether it's air quality, for example, if we take one of those surveys. What we want to be able to do moving forward is recognise how we can engage effectively with residents across the board to make sure that we get that level of engagement that we think this topic deserves. As mentioned within the report, we do now have a corporate communications plan in place as part of the Sustainable Hertfordshire strategy to be able to make sure that we can maximise that level of engagement moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Go on, Julie.
The total number was 495 at the close, and we're getting on average 462 visits per month to our web pages. And the reason that, as Hugh said, the numbers are considerably different when we use specific platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, because we've already got an address list, you know, an audience that's already established. And that's the same for Update Me. We've got a really good following so far on Update Me, and that's only been going for about a month. Yeah. So we are still trying to get those platforms established, and we will keep drip feeding those messages on those platforms. The website has been very, very difficult for us to establish, and it's at a time when people are going to the homepage to look for specific information and advice, probably around COVID related issues, so that they don't tend then to look for other items. We are constantly in negotiations with the web team as to how we can up our profile, and we need these figures to be able to go back to them and say, you know, this is where people are heading. Well, that's where we need to aim our comms, and we've now got two specific officers that are dedicated to Sustainable Hertfordshire in the comms team, and that's made a real difference to our figures, and also us to be able to get the press releases out there and the comms out there via those different channels. So it is still a work in progress, and we are still trying to make our presence felt across the whole of those different platforms, and certainly something that we want to carry on pushing.
That's great. It's just that this is such a huge subject that, you know, just would have thought more people would have engaged with that survey. I'm just surprised.
Just to come with one final point to support what Julie was saying with regards to the engagement on the website, Councillor West. Obviously, we're receiving around about 462 hits per month. That's in keeping with a report that we received from the web team around similar kind of levels of campaigns. And in fact, for example, we receive more hits from what we have is a single issue campaign site rather than a main website as it prefers. For similar kind of things such as Recycle Right and Reusable Nappies and Good Growth, we kind of get a similar level of consistency across the board. It's simply, as Julie was highlighting, the people come to local government websites at the moment primarily with health concerns or health queries, and we're obviously growing that audience. It must be recognised that we've only been in existence since August, so to be able to get around about 400 weekly engagement hits with residents shows progress. But as highlighted by myself and Julie, we recognise that the importance of this issue, we want to be able to see that level of progression, and we have what we believe the mechanisms in place to be able to deliver that.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Colin. Colin?
Sorry, Chair, that's a legacy hand, I think.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, that's the last person who wants to speak. So that's shorter recommendations on this one. The report is to update the panel on progress and for information only. So therefore, members are asked to note the content of the report and the progress made to date. If you're happy with that, would you indicate in chat?
Noted. That's fine.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we get to Sarah on the performance, which is on the performance monitor. I think she wants to start off with advice of a slight typo regarding MP inquiries. Shame on you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everybody. Yes, I wanted to just mention, with sincere apologies, regarding the overall performance relating to MP inquiries. We did see a decrease during last quarter, where 64 out of 78 inquiries were responded to, but were outside of the 10-day target. In the commentary of the report, it stated that 4 were not dealt with in time. Slight typo, it was actually 14. So apologies. And there was also an error with the formulating of graph number 2 on page 12 of the body of the report. The numbers came across formulated incorrectly, and they show 22 out of 77 and it should have been 17 out of 22. However, the overall percentage of 77% for December is correct and didn't affect the overall performance score. So again, apologies that that report had a couple of errors in it this quarter. The other highlights of the exceptions of quarter three I wanted to just take you through was there was a slight decrease of the overall performance of 0.19%, where the most significant decrease came from the Countryside and Rights of Way service. This service has been particularly impacted during the COVID situation in terms of not being able to promote health walks, and the volunteering service particularly hit again in December as we entered into another national lockdown in the tier system. They also experienced some issues around definitive maps and searches due to accessing that information, which was beyond our control due to external sources having limited resources during this period. So they kind of did have a little bit of a struggle through last quarter. In terms of improvements, main area to achieve this was in the quality of workmanship following compliance auditing. And we also attended our footway defects that were reported by the public within the prescribed response times. And again, given COVID restriction impacts, and we were experiencing a number of self-isolation cases, and then we throw in the inclement weather we experienced with the rain during quarter three, the performance remained really high there, which was, you know, exceptional given the circumstances faced. One thing I wanted to note was you may have noticed some graphs in the main body of the report haven't been populated, particularly around speed counts. This is due to a delay in the programme as they've implemented safety precautions, again, for restrictions in place. We've recorded these as green for reporting purposes. However, the counts are now starting to take place. It will take them a little while to get where they need to be, so we should be seeing some data coming through from that team. But overall, the performance remains stable, which I think is quite impressive given sort of like the quarter three that we experienced. And I'd just like to open if anybody's got any queries, comments or observations they wanted to raise. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Steve.
Yes, I'm looking in theme 4, efficiency and value for money, and the street lighting energy usage. I mean, it shows a cyclical usage by month of the year, which clearly depends on the number of hours of darkness. I mean, what it doesn't track is the year-by-year change, and I would expect that to be showing a downward trajectory because the proportion of LED lights is increasing. So is it not more important to measure the street lighting energy usage over a longer period than just over an individual year? And I guess the other issue, which I'm sure you can't answer, Sarah, is that actually we seem to be diverging further away from the target, whereas I would have thought, given that the LED rollout has been continuing, that we ought to be getting closer to it. So I guess there's a question of what action is being taken about that.
Thank you, Councillor Jarvis. Regards to year by year, that is something that we can look at to factor in to bring that into the report so you can see the comparison. So I'll look at including that into this because that's that's a good point. With the other one, I can find out and come back to you.
I think that would be useful, but as I say, I would be expecting this to be getting closer to the target, and we look to be getting further away. And it would be interesting to understand why that is.
Yeah, no problem. I can come back to you on that one.
Thank you.
Perhaps, Sarah, you can look at the target to see if that's realistic.
I mean, I think for quarter three we were on target. We achieved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I take your point. Yeah, we can look at that absolutely, and I can come back to you. Not a problem.
Thank you.
Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Sarah, just a quick question on footpaths and footways.
Yeah.
And you talked about repairs, and I wondered if they were just general repairs, or were they repairs as a result of more people out walking, more people taking walks through the countryside network, and there's the erosion of the footpaths that has caused some difficulty.
Thank you. With regards to the comment around prescribed time, so that measure was around a customer reported defect, and I was going out to look at that customer reported defect to ensure we do that within the prescribed time. And on average, we were in the high 90s, and at 1 month we achieved 100% of all of that. I don't have any figures to hand as to potentially the reasons why, but we have seen an increase, I think, as you say, because most of the public are out walking, are noticing some of the defects, are reporting those. But I can look into the level of detail you're asking, and I can provide that.
Okay. It's very difficult to actually assess what the reason for the deterioration. More people reporting, as you say.
Yeah.
I'll point out one thing, Mark. You might have noticed on the rights of way, etc., bridle paths, the wet weather really made them muddy and slushy and need a repair. So we stuck £1 million in to try and do something about that. We can really see what the effect of the winter has had on those paths, but when you talk about stretch of tarmac, it's a bit more difficult.
Okay, all right, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
I've got no more hands. Are we therefore happy to note that report? Note the report on performance monitor for Q3 2020-21. Indicating chat, please. Yes, noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we haven't got any other part 1 business, and we haven't got any part 2 business. So I'd just like to advise you the next meeting, 15th of June, for whoever is here, 2 p.m. That's nice timing because we've now got over 3/4 an hour for lunch and a break before the joint cabinet panel at 12 o'clock. So I'll see some of you then. Thank you very much. And in the meantime, thanks to Teresa and Elaine for keeping us on track. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
All right.